Sierra Leone and Guyana members, Mr. Benjamin deplored the failure to resolve the crisis in that country after nearly a year of humanitarian crisis. Let's listen to him.
In front of this deteriorating situation, we want to seize this occasion to make an urgent call upon all the Sudanese actors to declare an immediate ceasefire to ease the suffering of the innocent Sudanese men, women, and children. With the Secretary General, we call upon the Sudanese parties to put aside their differences and to consider the opportunity of the holy month of Ramadan, a month of peace, to embark on a path of appeasement and restraint for a durable peace in Sudan.
Regarding the humanitarian situation in Sudan, Mr. Benjamin said that the country was facing the biggest displacement crisis in the world, with more than 1 million people displaced, with a high risk of acute food insecurity threatening millions of Sudanese, particularly in Darfur. In this regard, Mr. Benjamin had this to say.
There is also a need to explore all ways and means to grant unhindered access to enable the flow of international humanitarian assistance so that it could reach all the affected Sudanese population through close cooperation between the Sudanese government and the deployed humanitarian agencies. In this regard, we welcome the announcement of the decision of the Sudanese authorities to facilitate humanitarian access through several crossing border points, such as Chad-Tina Darfur, including the facilitation of humanitarian flights accessing airport in Al-Fasher, Kadugli, and Al-Ubaid. We encourage further engagement between OCHA and the Sudanese authorities.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjamin, hailed the announcement of a new round of talks as well as the holding of next April's International Humanitarian Conference in Paris.
We also welcome the announcement of a new round of talks under the Jeddah process, and therefore we invite the Sudanese parties to engage in good faith during these talks. Here, we wish to commend the facilitator and of the process, namely the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United States, and IGAD, who represent also the African Union, for their continued effort. The holding of an international humanitarian conference in Paris next April is also a commendable initiative, expected to provide an opportunity to secure clear commitments from the Sudanese actors and the international community to improve the humanitarian situation on the ground.
That was Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjamin. For his part, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on all parties to the conflict in Sudan to show restraint on the occasion of the holy fasting month of Ramadan, saying that the principles of this month must prevail.
It is time to silence the guns and raise the volume for peace. In just days, the holy month of Ramadan will commence. So from this chamber today, I am making an appeal. I call on all parties in Sudan to honor the values of Ramadan by honoring a Ramadan cessation of hostilities. This cessation of hostilities must lead to a definitive silence of the guns across the country and set out a firm path towards lasting peace for the Sudanese people. The values of Ramadan must prevail. The humanitarian crisis in Sudan is reaching colossal proportions. Fully half the population, some 25 million people, need life-saving assistance. Over 14,000 people have been killed, although that number is likely far higher.
That was UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Now, Prime Minister Nabil Arbabi has received the Director General of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, KUDANQ, who is on a working visit to Algeria. Discussions focused on the state and prospects for cooperation between Algeria and the FAO, while reiterating the joint desire to promote cooperation within the framework of bilateral projects to support and develop the agricultural sector. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has also received the Director General of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. The meeting provided an opportunity to review the cooperation relations between Algeria and the FAO, as well as ways and means of strengthening and expanding them further in the future. Mr. Dongu has underlined the importance of relations between his organization and the Algerian government in a number of areas, noting in this connection his readiness to support Algeria in aquaculture projects, particularly with regard to the technical aspect, the modernization of production methods and means, and the expansion of scientific research. Algeria has been elected on the occasion of the 105th session of the Executive Council of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons to represent the African region in the person of Ambassador Salima Abdelhaq, Algeria's permanent representative to the OPCW, to occupy the post of Vice President of the Council. Now to the Palestinian issue. The ongoing Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip has so far resulted in 30,800 facilities, most of them children and women. While the world celebrates International Women's Day, Palestinian women continue to fall victim to the ongoing Israeli war of genocide, becoming martyrs, wounded, prisoners, and displaced from one place to another, fearing the relentless Israeli airstrikes. The League of Arab States has called on the international community on the occasion of International Women's Day to protect Palestinian women and girls and to work to stop all forms of violence inflicted on them by the Zionist occupier. More in this report.
In a statement published on Friday by the Wafa news agency, the Arab League also expressed its firm condemnation of the serious escalation perpetrated by the Zionist entity, the occupying power, in the occupied Palestinian territories, including the Gaza Strip, and its devastating humanitarian, social, and psychological consequences on the Palestinian people and on the women and children of Palestine, commending the resilience of Palestinian women in the face of the aggression and violence of the Zionist occupying forces fighting alongside her brother man. The Arab League denounced the abuses that the Zionist entity continues to inflict on the Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, by depriving them of humanitarian aid. It insisted in this respect on the unhindered entry of humanitarian aid, calling on the international community to force the Zionist entity to stop its crimes and atrocities against the defenseless Palestinian population. According to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, 9,000 women have been killed since the start of the savage Zionist aggression against the besieged Gaza Strip.
UN humanitarians have reiterated their deep concern at the growing number of Palestinian children who are dying of hunger in the Gaza Strip, which has been under the Zionist genocidal aggression since the 7th of October 2023, just a few days before the start of the holy month of Ramadan, and with no ceasefire agreement in sight. They said that Palestinian children in Gaza who have suffered many or may not survive the famine, calling for aid to be allowed into the besieged Palestinian enclave. On International Women's Day, the English service of Radio Algeria International pays tribute to two Algerian women, namely Beya Mahieddine, a famous painter, and then Tinhinan, the queen of the Tuareg.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a weekly program in which we'll let you discover or know more about the Algerian heritage, to include history, traditions, popular beliefs, social ritual celebrations, as well as many aspects of the Algerians' life dating back to the Berber or Amazigh era until the Muslims one. Today we'll evoke the female Algerian painter Beya Mahieddine, generally known as Beya. Beya was born in 1931 in Burj Al Kifan, east of Algiers, to a poor family, and she never attended school in the then French colonized Algeria. At the age of 5, Beya lost both her parents and her grandmother to Cavher. In 1936, a French woman called Marguerite Carmina fled to Algeria to escape World War II. She then met 10-year-old Beya and offered her a room in her house. Beyer used to refer to her as her adoptive parent. Being after that within an upper-class family, the mystery remains on why Beyer was not sent to school. According to the great son of Marguerite, Carmina, Beyer worked as a servant for her. Beyer started making animals and human figures out of clay before joining Marguerite's household. Marguerite was fascinated by Beyer's art and introduced her to gouache and watercolors. Beyer spent most of her time painting with colors. In 1947, 16-year-old mounted her first solo exhibition, which was arranged by Marguerite. The exhibition took place at the Galerie Adrien Maet in Paris. Beyer's work was praised by the Pope of Surrealism, namely André Breton. He said, "And here performed on the fabric threads of the future's Virgin the hieratic figure of Beyer, lifting a corner of the veil, revealing what the young, united, harmonious and loving world could be. It is undeniable that her gear of wonders secretly takes part in extracts of perfumes from 1001 Nights." Beyer, whose mission is to recharge with meaning the beautiful nostalgic words, "The Happy Arabia." Beyond the ostentatious surrealist essay of Breton on Beyer, one can sense in his words the nostalgia for a certain Orient, not the actual existing one, but the imaginary transformed by the eye of the Westerner, who can see only the corner of the veil lifted to reveal the happy Arabia and fairy tales filled with extracts of perfumes from 1001 Nights that haunted the Orientalists' thought for a long time. Like Frida Kahlo, Beyer Mohyeddin was categorized as a surrealist artist, and her art was interpreted by the surrealists as a fantasy and fairy tale of unreal reality. They went as far as to include her name in the General Dictionary of Surrealism and its surroundings. At the time of her exhibit in Paris in 1947, there was a resurgent interest in non-European arts, including paintings, masks, textiles, and architecture. After World War II and Nazism, Europe experienced a deep crisis of civilization felt most strongly by intellectuals and artists. These circles were searching for a universal dimension of expression, but not without some attraction to the exotic. This was quite obvious in Breton's essay on Beyer's exhibit. He said, quote, "There is far away from this old world so-called civilized, this world running out of breath, this dragon with 100 dried-up breasts, this knocked-down masters whose scales are decomposing, races, castes were pitted against one another, and the dragon could not stop vomiting the carnage and the oppression." In addition to the national crisis of devastating war, was the crisis of European colonialism and imperialism on a global scale, specifically the colonization of Algeria by France. Some other art critics classify Beyer's work as naive art. Naive art is defined as an art produced by self-taught artists who lack formal training. The popularity of Henri Rousseau as a native artist refutes this definition because he had some informal art training. Naive painting may appear to be innocent and childlike, a deceptive perception because Western naive artists borrow conventional composition and techniques from the history of art. Western modern artists interested in naive art stems from their fascination with primitive cultures and the unconscious states of mind. Naive painting is by product of individual psyches rather than communal histories. Between 1952 and 1967, Beyer stopped painting. These years, she spent bearing and raising children at Blida, west of the capital, Algiers. In 1967, she picked up her paintbrush and color again. She has exhibited her work in many solo and group exhibitions here in Algeria and in France. If you try to remove Beya from her cultural traditions and juxtaposing her work with the European modernists who took a particular interest in her work, provided not only a new manner of characterizing artistic modernism, but also illustrates that the ideal of a static East was an important component of a modernism traditionally characterized as an internal European creation.